Severance Season 2, Episode 8, titled Sweet Vitriol, is a bit of a weird one. Severance is a show that continually subverts my expectations, and it did so again here with this episode. This is an episode that doesn't feature any of the main severed cast. Neither does any of this episode take place at Lumen or on the severed floor. Instead, this episode is entirely focused around Harmony Cobel, a character we haven't seen since episode 3, when Helena Egan invited her to have a conversation with the board to discuss her new job position at Lumen. However, she felt that something sinister was at work and decided to escape and drove off. Harmony has now arrived at the coastal town of Saltz. This is the town she was headed towards earlier this season, but decided to turn around. The town of Saltz is an old, rundown town that feels nearly abandoned. This happens to be where Harmony grew up. It's her childhood home. And much like the town itself, every resident we see there looks like they're practically at death's door. Harmony makes her way to a local cafe. On the way there, she receives a call from Devin, connecting us back to the previous episode. However, she ignores the call. Upon arriving at the cafe, she begins conversing with the owner. And based on their conversation, we gather that Harmony knows this man. He is clearly someone from her past, and she needs a favor. The following scene, they meet up together at a factory, and we learn that this is an old Lumen factory, and it is implied that this is the factory Kier and Imogen met. During this conversation, Harmony asks the man to take her to see Sissy, and he reluctantly obliges. Harmony, believing that Lumen is probably tracking her movements, wants to use him as a cover. One of the significant things that we learn in this episode isn't so much more answers to the mystery, although we do get some revelations, but this episode gives us some insight, obviously, into the character of Harmony, but it allows us to see her in a more personal and intimate way. This episode is presented a bit like a character study. We now get to see her out in the real world and her seeing the real world consequences of what Lumen has done to her hometown. They have depleted this town of its resources. They have left a destroyed town in their wake, and they have almost completely sucked the life out of it. Shortly after, they arrive at Sissy's house, and it turns out that this is Harmony's childhood home, and Sissy is her aunt. We learn that Harmony's mother has passed away, which is extremely emotional for her, especially because she never got to say goodbye. We also find out from Sissy that Drummond was there asking about her, and so Harmony's suspicions are correct that Lumen is trying to track her down. I real quick want to highlight the performance of Sissy, played by Jane Alexander. She does an excellent job creating a pretty deplorable character, someone who has fully bought into the Lumen ideology and has become a very cold-hearted, bitter old woman because of it. And I like the additional insight we get into Harmony's character here and some of her background. This is a woman that was essentially brought up in this cult-like system. And I really like that the show kind of heavily leans into Lumen being this sort of cult-like organization. And we see that Harmony was someone who was, to some degree, brainwashed. She went to school for Lumen. She was somebody who grew up in this culture with this belief system. And she's now beginning to realize how harmful and destructive that is, and is now starting to go through a deprogramming. Harmony then discovers a hidden key in the house, which gives her access to her mother's room. And this is a very emotional and troubling moment for her. we finally discover the meaning or significance of the tube that Harmony has been carrying around that we've seen a few times throughout the show. This is something that belonged to her mother, and she plugs this tube into what I believe is a CPAP machine. And she lays in her mother's bed and uses it to breathe. And this is a bit of a strange moment, but I think it's just something showing how much she loved her mother and how much she desires to feel close and connected to a woman who has now passed away, who, once again, she never got to properly say goodbye to. Shortly after this, we get a bit of an odd scene where the man who drove her there, we never learn his name. He enters the house and joins Harmony in her mother's room. He asks Harmony if she wants to get high, and we learn he is a drug dealer and they both huff some sort of substance. But there is one additional main reason why Harmony is here, and something very significant that she is looking for. This leads her outside into a cellar where she digs through some of her old belongings. We see her find what appears to be an old yearbook with her name on it, and she also finds a head statue of Jane Egan. But what's inside this statue is the major reveal of this episode. She takes out a notebook, brings it back inside, and shows it to Sissy. And we learn that the Egans have stolen Harmony's intellectual property. We find out that all the code, all the plans and ideas behind the overtime contingency, the Glasgow block, it was all her ideas. And she never got credit for them. Harmony then leaves after the guy outside tells her that someone is coming. We see what we assume to be a Lumen vehicle appear over the hill. Harmony gets in the truck and drives off, leaving the man there. But before she does, she looks at him and says, "Hampton." On her way out of town, Harmony receives another phone call from Devin, and this time she decides to answer. Devin informs her what's happening with Mark, that he is currently in the reintegration procedure, and the episode ends with her asking Mark to tell her everything. While this episode may not provide some of the answers that some viewers are hoping for, this is a show that I am learning to be patient with, and I'm really enjoying it. The writers here have shown that they have a plan. They've thought this through. They've carefully constructed this, and so no matter how many episodes or how much time it takes, I know they are guiding and directing us in the way that they see fit. And so I appreciate that they are patient and they take their time with episodes like this to give us some character insight and fill in some backstory. And I like too that they are focusing on characters and that we are beginning to see a real significant character arc with Harmony Cobel, as she is seemingly now on, I guess you could call it, the good guys team. We don't entirely know yet how she's going to react or what exactly she's going to do, but I have a suspicion that she is going to be on board in helping the severed employees bring Lumen down. Well, that's what I learned from episode 8 anyways, and those are my thoughts. Hit me up down below. Very curious to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this episode. Feel free to share any theories or ideas you might have with where things are headed. Look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.